Hi guys, welcome to Unreal Engine video tutorials series. In this video, I would like to discuss changing pivot of an actor in Unreal Engine. If required, we can change the location of pivot point of an actor in Unreal Engine guys. What is pivot? Pivot indicates the reference point for placing, rotating and scaling an actor guys. Pivot is a reference point for placing, rotating and scaling an actor guys. Based on the location of pivot point on the actor is placed, rotated and scaled differently guys. You can see here, if I drag and drop a cube, you can see half of the cube is inside the floor. Why? The reason is its pivot point is in the center of this cube. If I drag and drop a chair, you can see that chair is not moved or placed half inside the floor. It is actually above the floor. Why? Because its pivot point is placed at the base of the chair. If I drag and drop the door, you can see that it is above the floor. Why? Because its pivot point is at the bottom left corner of this door. So pivot point is a reference point for placing the actors. So actors are placed differently, okay, based on the pivot point location. Understanding? Not only that, the actors are rotated differently. You can see if I select this cube, I switch to rotation tool and rotate around Z axis. You can see it is rotating from the center. It is rotating from center. Whereas if I select the door and rotate around Z axis, it rotates from that corner like open close door. It is not rotating from the center, right? It is rotating around the pivot point. So actors are rotated differently based on the location of the pivot point on the actor guys. Not only that, the scaling will be different. If I switch to scale tool, if I scale this in x-axis, it scales both the sides. You can see it is scaling both the sides because pivot is in the center. Whereas if I try to scale this in the y-axis, you see it scales only on one side. The door is scaling only on one side, not both the sides, right? So that is how the pivot point is used for placing, rotating and scaling the actors in Unreal Engine guys. It's a very important point to understand. If required, we can change the pivot point location on the actor. How? First you select the actor using the translate tool. Hold the white sphere of the translate gizmo using middle mouse button and then drag to change the pivot point temporarily. That's the important point, temporarily. You can see here, I select this cube, okay, press the F key to focus. Now the pivot point is exactly in the center of this cube. What I want is, I want it on the left side here, on the left side. So I switch to translate tool and then I hold this white sphere using the middle mouse button and drag. You can see now we are changing the pivot point. We are changing the pivot point location here. You can see I can place it anywhere I want. Okay, I placed it here. Now it is a reference point for placement, rotating and scaling. Like if I move it, you can see if I want I can rotate it. Now if I rotate it in the Z axis, it rotates from this corner, not from the center. You can see it is rotating around the pivot point. Not only that, if I scale, it scales only on one side. You can see it is not scaling both the sides like before, right? It is scaling on only one side here, right? So pivot point performs a major role. And the important thing you remember, if you click somewhere else or do other tasks and if you select the cube again, the pivot point is going to be reset back to center guys, to the original place. So if I click outside and select the cube, you can see that the pivot point is set back to the center here. It is placed back in the original place. What if you want to change the pivot point permanently for this actor? Then right click on the selected actor, go to pivot option and click on set as pivot offset. Set as pivot offset. You can see again I switch back to translate tool, hold the white sphere with the middle mouse and change the pivot location here. Okay, I change the pivot location. Let me place it little here. Okay, that's fine. Then I right click, go to pivot and say set as pivot offset. Set as pivot offset. Now the pivot point location is changed permanently for this. If I click somewhere else and click back on the cube, it is placed here where we have changed, right? Now we can rotate around it. You can see, right? If we want, we can scale the actor with respect to pivot point, right? If you want to reset pivot, go to pivot option again and click on reset pivot offset. So here, if you want to reset the pivot point back to the center, right click on the cube and go to pivot and say reset pivot offset. See, it is back to original position. So very important. See, pivot point, let's drag a cylinder here. I press the F key to focus. We have a cylinder here, nice. Okay, I place it above the floor. Okay, now if I try to scale this, okay, if I try to scale in the Z axis, it is going to scale both sides, up as well as down. It is scaling. You can see that. Why is that? Because pivot point is in the center. What if I need to scale this cylinder only upward? It should not scale down. It should scale only upward. Then I have to change its pivot point location. So what I do? First, I switch back to the translate tool or move tool. Then hold the white sphere with the middle mouse button and drag it down. See, I am changing the pivot point here. See, I changed the pivot point and placed it at the bottom here. Fine. Then I right click and say pivot, set as pivot offset. Then if I take the scale tool and scale it, you can see it is scaling upward. It is scaling upward. You can see that, right? It is not scaling down. So pivot affects the scaling. It affects the rotation, how the rotation is going to be done on the actor, as well as for placement, guys, right? The most important thing you remember here is, if you are designing any model or mesh inside a Maya, a Max, Blender, in any 3D software, make sure you set the pivot properly and then export, guys, so that the designer need not to change the pivot point while designing levels in Unreal Engine. Okay, because pivot performs a major role in placement, rotation and scaling. Okay, if you do not place the pivot point properly, like for example here the cube pivot point is in the center. If I have to scale, if I have to place it on the ground, okay, then for every cube I have to place and move it up, place and move it up, right, place and move it up. That's not a good idea, right? So pivot point, if it is at the bottom, it's very easy to place these cubes, scale as well as, right? So if you are designing any 3D model in 3D software, make sure you set the pivot point properly. Okay, if required, we can definitely change the pivot point in Unreal Engine by following these simple steps, guys. If you like this video, hit the like button and share with your friends so that everyone will get benefit. In the upcoming video tutorials, we discuss more about Unreal Engine. For more benefits and be updated, do not forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Keep learning, keep designing, keep sharing. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. See you in the next tutorial.